For months, I felt a strange tension creeping through the walls of my own home, uneasiness I couldn't quite name. At first, I blamed age. After all, at 64, your mind wanders sometimes. But this wasn't imagination. This was real. Too real. One night, after hearing whispers behind closed doors and footsteps, long after the house should have been asleep, I decided on a desperate plan. I told my son and his wife that I was traveling to visit my sister. I packed a suitcase, kissed them goodbye, and let my son drive me to the bus station like a dutiful daughter would. But instead of boarding the bus, I slipped out the back exit, called a taxi, and went straight to my neighbor Moses' home across the street. From his upstairs window, my house sat fully visible. Place that once felt warm and full of memories now looked suspiciously alive in the shadows. Moses, a widower who had lived beside me for decades, welcomed me without hesitation. When I told him what I suspected, his expression tightened as if he had been carrying a heavy secret himself. "Elena," he whispered, "you're not imagining anything. I've seen people going in and out of your house at night, strangers, always with luggage, always meeting Audrey at the door." His words struck me like ice water. Strangers, luggage, night visits. My daughter-in-law, Audrey, had been unusually attentive the past few months, too attentive. And Robert, my son, looked exhausted all the time. His phone always face down, his answers clipped. I had felt the distance growing, felt the walls of my own home closing in on me. So I waited with Moses, sitting by that window with a heart pounding like a war drum. And it didn't take long for the truth to begin revealing itself. Around 6 that evening, a silver car parked quietly in front of my home. A young couple stepped out, each carrying a suitcase. Audrey opened the door before they could even knock. She smiled at them, accepted something the man discreetly handed her cash and guided them inside. I felt my stomach twist. My daughter-in-law was renting out rooms in my house. My house. The one my late husband and I spent 4 decades building with our hands. Our sweat, our dreams. But Moses laid a gentle hand on mine. "This is just the beginning," he murmured. "Wait until midnight. That's when things get clearer." I didn't know then, staring at my own home from across the street, that the darkness that night carried secrets far beyond illegal guest secrets that threatened not only my house, but my freedom. But what I saw at midnight made everything before it look innocent. Midnight arrived like a held breath. The neighborhood was silent, but my house was far from asleep. From Moses's dimly lit window, I watched the place I'd lived in for 40 years transform into something unrecognizable. Lights flickered in rooms that should have been empty. My old master bedroom, the guest room, even the small office I rarely used anymore. Shadows moved inside. Voices murmured. My home no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a rented-out checkpoint for strangers. My chest tightened as the truth settled in. Audrey wasn't just hosting a guest or two she'd turned my home into a secret business, a business I had never approved, a business she had built on my property, behind my back, while smiling sweetly at me every morning over coffee. But the night wasn't done revealing its rot. Around 11 p.m., another car rolled up. 2 more strangers stepped out with backpacks. Audrey greeted them the same way money exchanged, hushed instructions, doors opening like she had rehearsed it 100 times. Before long, I counted for unfamiliar faces inside my house. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. My son, Robert, had always been quiet, but never dishonest, never cruel. Seeing him step into the house 20 minutes later, briefcase in hand, acting as if nothing were wrong, shattered something inside me. How long had he known? How long had he allowed this to happen under the same roof where I had raised him? Moses stayed by my side, his presence the only thing grounding me. It started small, he explained softly. One visitor here and there. Then more. Now it's constant. I think they waited for you to go to bed each night. The betrayal stung, but something worse was coming. Something Moses had been hesitant to tell me. He tightened his grip on his mug before speaking. 2 weeks ago, I saw Audrey meeting a man at the cafe on Maple Street. Someone older, professional. He had a briefcase. They talked for nearly an hour. I didn't want to eavesdrop, but I heard a few words: documents, evaluation, something about competency, and a care facility. The world around me froze. Competency? Care facility? My heart began hammering against my ribs. Those weren't the words of someone concerned for my well-being. Those were the words of someone plotting to take control. Moses looked at me with deep regret. I didn't know what it meant at first. But after tonight, after seeing all this, I think they're planning something bigger than renting rooms. I stared through the window as the lights in my house finally dimmed. One by one, until darkness swallowed nearly every room. The home I had loved and protected for decades had become a stranger to me, occupied, altered, corrupted. And as the clock struck 12, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about money anymore, because at midnight, the real secret finally stepped out of the shadows. The street was silent when the clock struck 12, but my house was anything but. Moses had dozed off beside me, yet my eyes remained fixed on the familiar silhouette across the road, my home. Now, a place filled with strangers and secrets. Then, at exactly 12:03 a.m., something happened that made the rest of the night feel tame. The side door, one we rarely used, opened slowly. Audrey stepped out, wrapped in a dark coat. She glanced around as if checking the shadows for witnesses. But she wasn't alone. A tall man followed her, carrying a heavy briefcase. The same kind Moses had described from the cafe encounter. My breath hitched. They walked through the yard, heading straight toward my late husband's shed. 1,000 memories lived in that little wooden building as tools. His handwriting on old boxers. His projects frozen in time after his passing. And now Audrey was unlocking it for a stranger. Inside, a light flickered on. Their silhouettes moved back and forth as if exchanging papers. Audrey held up documents, flipping through them with careful precision. The man pointed at something. She nodded. My stomach tied itself in knots. After 20 tense minutes, the man packed everything back into his briefcase. But instead of returning through the house, they slipped out through the back gate, the one that led to the elite, into the darkness like smugglers. Something inside me snapped open. This wasn't a simple side hustle. This was planning, strategic, hidden, dangerous planning. By morning, I could no longer sit still. Audrey was busy hosting the remaining guests, and Robert left for work early. This was my chance. Moses guided me to the alley and kept watch while I unlocked the back gate. My legs shook as I crept toward the shed. Inside, nothing had changed, at least at first glance. dusty shelves, old tools, my husband's forgotten projects. But then I saw it. A modern metal lockbox sitting on the workbench, completely out of place. With trembling hands, I opened it. Stacks of cash. Fresh bills bundled neatly. Thousands of dollars. But hidden beneath the money was something far worse. Paperwork. Property transfer forms listing Robert as the future owner. A rental agreement that falsely named him as the legal landlord. Medical evaluation documents with my name listed under cognitive decline review. Brochures from a private nursing home with highlighted sections. And at the bottom a drafted power of attorney, giving Robert full control of my assets. But the most horrifying thing was a note in Audrey's handwriting. Mild sedative during appointment. Patient will be disoriented. Witnesses ready. My knees nearly gave out. They were planning to drug me. Make me sign away my life. Then put me somewhere I couldn't fight back. I snapped photos of everything, hands trembling. Breath uneven before putting the documents back exactly as I found them. When I showed Moses the photos, his face drained of color. This isn't just betrayal, Elena. This is a full conspiracy. He was right. And now I needed help. Because once I called my lawyer, the real battle began and the trap turned back on them. The moment I stepped back into Moses' kitchen, clutching my phone filled with photos of the documents, I knew there was no turning back. Everything I had, feared, and everything I hadn't dared to imagine was written clearly in those papers. This wasn't only a betrayal. It was a plan to erase me from my own life. I called Ellen, my longtime friend and lawyer. And when she heard what I'd discovered, her calm voice hardened with urgency. Elena, this is much deeper than illegal rentals. This is a coordinated attempt to strip you of legal autonomy. But we can stop it if you act quickly and play along for a little longer. That night, we set the strategy in motion. Ellen prepared emergency legal protections. Revocation of any possible power of attorney. A certified competency declaration. And restrictions preventing Robert or Audrey from accessing my property documents. Henry, a trusted notary, stamped and sealed everything. But the most important part was the trap. I had to return home. On Monday evening, with a suitcase I no longer needed, I pretended to arrive early from my trip. Robert opened the door with a startled smile. Audrey hovering behind him with rehearsed warmth. Their relief was unmistakable. They believed they still had the upper hand. I told them stories about my sister's stories that never happened. They listened eagerly, unaware that every moment I spent in that house was now part of a countdown. At night, through the crack of their half-closed door, I overheard them finalize their plan. Friday morning, a sedative in my breakfast, a fake medical checkup, my signature under confusion, a nursing home waiting. They had no idea their entire plot was collapsing. Thursday night arrived with growing tension in the house. Guests filled the rooms again. Audrey moved with meticulous efficiency, Robert offering brief, nervous smiles. And then, at 9 p.m., the doorbell thundered. Municipal inspector. Open the door. The panic in their eyes was instant. One by one, the inspector uncovered every hidden guest, every illicit room rental, every lie. His assistant photographed everything. Strangers who'd just paid for rooms were shocked to learn they were part of an illegal operation. Audrey tried to fabricate excuses. Robert stammered. nothing worked. The inspector announced fines, legal actions, and immediate eviction of all guests. That was my moment. I stepped out of my room into the center of the chaos. I am the owner of this home, I said. And I authorized none of this. The expression on Robert's face shattered me, but not enough to forget what he'd planned. Audrey went pale. I confronted them with every detail. The shed, the documents, the sedative, the nursing home. Audrey denied it, then stumbled over her own lies. Robert begged. But I no longer owed them silence. By morning, they were gone, suitcases packed, eyes hollow, their future uncertain. I watched them drive away, not as a mother losing her children, but as a woman reclaiming her life. The next weeks were quiet, heavy, healing. I cleaned the house, repainted walls, restored my husband's shed. Moses kept me company. Ellen continued the legal fight, ensuring the doctor lost his license and the fraudulent plans were dismantled. Robert sent a letter later, heartbroken, apologizing. Shattered by the weight of what he'd done. I kept it. I haven't answered yet. Someday, maybe. But not now. Because today, my home is mine again. My mind is mine again. And my freedom something they tried to steal's the one thing I will never let anyone threaten again. And that's how I learned the hardest truth of all sometimes. The real danger doesn't come from strangers, but from the people you trusted enough to let inside your home. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people remember. No matter how old you are, it's never too late to stand up for yourself.